and came to the point where I turned to my wife and I said, am I the man, if you were to meet me today, that you would want to marry? And the answer was no. And so I had to make some changes. I needed to adjust the life that I was living.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very much, as always, for taking the time to join me. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Operating Officer of Pixel True, Pixel Copy and Pixel Publishing, Warren Miles Pickup, who is here to discuss his work in finding balance in life. And this is especially personal for Warren, as he spent about a decade on the road in financial sales while raising 3 daughters, and ultimately it proved to be very much a challenge for him and his family. And this was the inspiration for him to transition to business ownership to better manage family responsibilities. I'm not 100% sure how many business owners will say that's a success, or that's a proper move, and we'll get to talk about that as we go. And he did this through developing systems and processes to help run a business while taking care, of course, of his family, and all while truly adopting an owner's mindset in the process. Warren has spent years helping entrepreneurs, business owners, and thought leaders scale their impact through branding, marketing, and publishing. And beyond business, Warren believes that personal growth and self-awareness are key to success, and that's what we're going to talk about in relation to finding balance today. Warren, thank you very, very much for taking the time to join me today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. So as I like to do at the beginning of each of the podcasts is get a bit of a feel and flavour for your journey that took you to that monumental decision to say, something has to change. I want to do this, and this is my chosen path, and then go from there. We had an opportunity to chat about this prior to recording, and it's quite the story. And it's not absolutely, I don't miss anything of my previous life and everything is wonderful, not to preempt that. So I'm really looking forward to you discussing that for the listeners.
Absolutely. So I'll give you a bit of my background. You did a great job in the introduction, basically covering the majority of it. I spent a number of years traveling on the road, kind of fell into finance after leaving university with a degree in urban planning, human geography, kind of, real estate development was my intention. Then discovered that you needed capital to do real estate development, of which I had none. So I wound up in banking and then in investment management, high net worth financial planning, those sorts of things. And eventually, it came to a day where I had been, I think the most I hit was 127 days in hotel rooms in a year.
Wow.
And it was applying a lot of pressure on my family life and balance. I was stressed out. I was getting hives from the stress. It was a lot to take on. Additionally, one of my daughters was struggling with some mental health issues, and came to the point where I turned to my wife and I said, am I the man, if you were to meet me today, that you would want to marry? And the answer was no. And so I had to make some changes. I needed to adjust the life that I was living, and be there for my family. And so transitioned out of that career, got into business ownership, as you mentioned. And I've essentially been taking a lot of the skills I learned working in a multi-billion-dollar advertising and marketing industry to help smaller individual businesses utilize the same tactics around decision psychology and heuristics to grow and scale their businesses, while also being at home. I was able to go to my daughter's basketball tournament in the morning yesterday. Had some meetings, but all my clients understand that family comes first. If I say, sorry, my daughter's got a basketball tournament, I'm going to that, they all go, yeah, totally understand, Warren. Let's connect tomorrow. And that's a big part of what I was trying to build. And the type of clients that I wanted to work with were the ones that would understand that there are other priorities other than just business growth.
Yeah, incredible. I want to go back to the moment, that pivotal moment when you're stressed, you're not settling, you're 100 plus days in a hotel room, whatever that looks like in terms of your social life and all
There
the
was
other
none.
there was none, and all the wider impacts. Was there one literal moment where you had that epiphany? I don't know if that's the right word to use, where you said, enough, and I need to have this conversation, and I think I know how it's going to go, but now's the time. Like, what did that look like for you?
It was a conversation with one of my clients, and
Right.
he suggested that I do this because he and I had gotten very close. In the way that I do sales or advising, anything like that, I really build very close connections with those people that I'm working with, because I believe that having a vested interest in each other's success is what leads to a great business relationship. And so he and I were sitting and talking about some of the challenges that I was facing at home. And he said, just go back and be the man that she would marry if you were to ask her again today. And so I went back and asked that question. And it was a pivotal moment in my life that really underpinned that I was not living life in the way that I was meant to be living it. I was very career oriented. I had all these success metrics that I was trying to achieve from a career perspective, but I was leaving everything else behind. I was an absentee father and husband. You know, I when I was home, I still spent time with them, but I was also really stressed when I got home, and my phone would ring at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, because I had become so integral in everybody else's lives that I was no longer integral in the lives of my family. And so it
Yeah.
was that moment when I asked my wife, you know, am I the man that you would marry today? And she said no. That it was like, okay, this has to change. I've got to make changes. And we started to plan from there. How do we remove me from this situation? How do we return to finding that balance? How do I get back to personal growth and to spending time doing the things that are personally rewarding and not just career rewarding going forward? And so that was the trigger for me, was really understanding how is my singular focus affecting the other people that are important in my life.
Yeah, and it's that ripple effect, isn't it, Warren? Where
Hmm.
you're having your own experience and you're in some way experiencing other people's experience, but you're not living their experience. So you're not really truly understanding of what
Yeah,
that looks like. So to then have that one, sobering question to
yeah,
say, I need to ask you here and I want you to be honest.
yeah,
And then she says the answer is no,
yeah.
but then you have that opportunity to then, it sounds like, co-create what
Yes.
your next steps are going to be. And what did that look like? And what sort of time frame was involved there?
I was about it was about a 2 year process
Right.
to kind of lead the way out of it. Additionally, you know, some of those other mental health issues, it became more and more significant, and so the design changed as we move forward.
Right.
And it really became focused on how can I be at home and more present and more involved in the lives of our girls, where I can help them to get through some of those more challenging moments that they're going to face as teenage girls. Because teenage girls, one, are incredibly mean to each other, and two, they take everything to heart, and it's very challenging for them to manage some of those really big emotions without, you know, a great support network right there behind them, showing them that, you know, they are loved, and that no matter what, you're going to be there for them.
Yeah. And did you involve the girls in your planning as you're moving forward? They would be the recipients
They
of
were a
your
little
time.
young at that point, but they certainly understood, you know, some of the intention behind the decisions, that it was about pulling back from the travel and being more present and being with them and that sort of thing. But I don't think we really involved them in the career decisions or the you know, the are we going to purchase this business decision, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's one of these very, very interesting dynamics of being physically present, and that's about it.
Hmm.
As you say, you're at the beck and call of whomever decides to call you at any particular point in time, and they're obviously needing something from you. You're trying to create balance probably subconsciously or even consciously, you know that you're not meeting the standards that you've set for yourself.
Yeah.
Yet, what's the alternative? I could ignore the call, potentially lose the client, or the client loses money in the process, and it becomes a very difficult situation to manage. When you had that, or immediately after the conversation with your wife, and the reason I want to concentrate more on this is I feel that anyone who's listening or watching this might be in need of having that conversation,
Yeah.
and then to know and understand that depending on how that conversation goes, that's not the end, that's the beginning.
Yeah.
And then there's things that have to happen afterwards. And you get to that spot where you are co-creating, you are sitting down saying, right, this is how I feel that it's going to go, these are the potential implications, this is kind of what it looks like. Was there any points in that where you thought, this is too much, the pendulum is swinging too far this way, we've never done this before, we don't know what this looks like? How did that go in terms of your ongoing dialogue and support of each other?
Absolutely. Yeah. It meant changes for both of us.
Yeah.
It meant that there were financial considerations, because I was leaving a very, high paying job to take on something that had quite a bit of risk. It wound up working out, but there was a lot of risk in making that move. And so it meant that my wife had to make some decisions around her career that increased her stability and kind of locked her into doing a job that wasn't her preference, in order to support me going through this transition. And so there were definitely some points where we mutually questioned, is this the right path? Are we doing the right thing? We wound up moving, like making a very significant move from Vancouver to Vancouver Island, to a very small community on Vancouver Island, as a part of being closer with the kids and being in a place where, we had a closer eye on them, and they weren't quite exposed to just as much of the stresses that exist in urban life. And so, there were definitely some points where we wondered, are we doing the right thing? Have we made the right decisions? Have we done everything we can to prepare for this? Is this too big of a change? But I think even when you question those sorts of things, the best thing you can do is just right foot, left foot, just keep marching, just keep pushing forward, and a commitment to a cause will inevitably lead to success.
Yeah, no, that's such a wonderful way to put it. And I think I can almost imagine the types of styles of conversation when you are having those questions, and the short answer, in terms of being absolutely true, is, I don't know. I actually don't know, but as you say, let's continue. We've set a solid path. It hasn't been on a whim. There has been a lot of research done, and we think this is the right and best thing to do for us for this season of our lives.
That's right.
And let's do the best we can with the decisions that we've made, and then and it's such a collaborative way to do it. If only life in general was like that in every other facet of life, eh?
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that we agreed on everything through this process. There have been plenty of disagreements and moments where one of us has been questioning and the other has been driving, and then the reverse. I think one of the other fallacies that is out there is that balance means 50-50, right? And balance is definitely not 50-50. It much like you said, as we have seasons in our life, we have seasons of balance. There's a pendulum swing that has to happen and you have to adapt to in your life, where, in some weeks your work is going to require more of you. And in some weeks your personal life is going to require more of you. And it's understanding that balance and allowing the pendulum to swing that makes finding balance successful. My dad always taught me that life is a perpetual challenge to find balance. That's what it's all about. But you have to recognize that it is not always going to be 50-50, that there are going to be additional demands on your time and your energy that are going to swing you out of that balance, but it's the return to it that is important.
Yeah, and if you can understand that, ideally preempt that, and then you're able to manage your own and other people's expectations. It's a brilliant segue, Warren, into what I was going to ask was, you're seeking balance and right sizing of your life experience at a given point in time. Through that journey, through procuring a business, an organization, and then the subsequent journey that you've gone on, how is what's changed in terms of your interpretation of balance, on top of the fact it's not 50-50 in
Mhm.
that journey?
Just how important having a social life and a community outside of work and family, how important that is. I, for years, neglected having any type of social network outside of my work. I would spend all my time at work, and then I would spend the rest of my time with my family.
Yeah,
But having that kind of third aspect was a piece that I had neglected for a long time, and it
yeah,
has become so important as a support network, as a place to let off steam, a place to uncover and enjoy new hobbies, those sorts of things. Like it's become incredibly important to recognize that it's a tripod and
yeah.
not a bipod in our lives.
Yeah, I love that. So what sort of things are you doing now that you weren't doing before?
Well, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons,
Oh,
which, my career in finance had been very literal. It's very, by the book. You take um, economic numbers, you take financial data, you take tax information, that sort of thing, and there's a straight course to how to solve a problem.
yeah,
And I was looking for something that was significantly more creative, moving into a creative career, all of
yeah,
that. There's It's great for stimulating ideas, for really making you question the way things are, telling stories. It's become such an integral part of what I do on a weekly basis,
yeah,
in whether I'm playing or whether I'm creating campaigns, those sorts of things. It's a lot of fun, and I've built some incredible relationships around that has led to me also doing curling. I spend a lot of time out in the woods hiking with my dogs. It's there's a whole range of different things that it has opened up just by joining this one group of individuals that were uh, open to not being the same as everybody else. They
yeah.
were interested in playing characters. They were interested in being creative, and it just expanded into this wonderful social support network.
Yeah, that's incredible, and it's another great segue. I did not expect Dungeons and Dragons, and as soon as I hear Dungeons and Dragons, I do remember the cartoon from when I was very young back home and
Hmm.
such. But in popular culture these days, Stranger Things
Yeah.
is the thing that has created a lot of interest in Dungeons and Dragons. Again, I know there's been a couple of remakes of movies and such since then. But that was it was a brilliant hook to be able to talk about. You come from finance. I know people in
Hmm.
finance. I managed many projects in my years, the financial projects specifically, whether it's new system implementations or process re-engineering or whatever that looked like. And financial people are a certain way. There are solutions to problems, and they
Hmm.
are typically the same way that you would do things, and the numbers don't lie, and there's a way to do it. And then you switch to being a creative and helping organizations tell the story, like you
Yeah.
said, and really going on that storytelling journey with them. How did that come about? I just imagine the conversation of saying, I found, I found this business and I think it's going to be a great thing. And then you present it to your wife, and your wife goes, "Excuse me, like, did you bash your head on the shower this morning? Like, what happened?" So, how did that come about?
It's my business partner brought the idea to me,
Right.
and he found this business, and he thought, there's a great opportunity here. People are moving towards engaging online. They're moving towards, the importance of a digital presence is incredibly important. A lot of businesses have not done it, or have done it poorly, and it's insanely expensive to do it.
Yeah.
And this is 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Um, and this was a way for them to do it relatively inexpensively. And rather than paying for a project up front, it was a subscription-based model, which made a lot of sense to me. A lot of the revenue that I had generated for the investment management companies I'd worked for was all about getting people in those purchasing consistently and building subscriptions and these sorts of things. So there was a lot of connections there that made sense. And I really liked the idea of helping smaller and medium-sized businesses to grow their digital marketing presence using the same sort of tactics that we had used in finance, around decision psychology and heuristics and these sorts of things. But they just don't have access to that type of support. And could we do it on a lower cost structure so that they're getting the benefits of it without having to pay, McKinsey or Accenture or some, major consulting firm hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. And so that's what we built out. And taking this to my wife, she's always been incredibly supportive. She said, yeah, I mean, Warren, you can sell anything, so just do it. Like, just build it. So it's wonderful having somebody who's been as supportive as my wife has been with regards to me chasing my dreams and making the decisions for our household with regards to my career.
I love it. You're a very lucky man. I am. Tell you that for sure. Yeah. So then in terms of your ability, it doesn't sound very transactional. Even if you are building a subscription model, it sounds very bespoke, where someone will come and say, this is who I am. This is what I think my story is. This is the message that I want to get out there. Yeah. What does that journey look like in terms of, going through the early stages up to and including presenting campaigns and such for authorization and approval?
Yeah, there's a lot of digging a little bit deeper than this is what my surface level story is, because understanding the ideal client profile for each client and what the purchasing incentives are for them, like what it is they're actually trying to accomplish behind the problem that is that surface level problem. Because building out messaging and content that really helps to support the 2-3 layers deep problem set is what we're trying to do. And a lot of what we do is based on educational based sales. So there was a gentleman by the name of Chet Holmes who wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. And his concept was, if you can teach people about their problem, teach them about what the major pain points are, what the results are if they don't make a change, and then show them what the solution is, actually teach them the solution, and then show them that you're the best possible provider of that solution, you're going to get the right people, because the DIYers are always going to DIY.
Yeah.
Right. The done with yous are going to hire you to do that kind of like beginning stage with them, and then let them go off and take it over. And then the done for yous are going to be your best clients. But the only way you discover that is if you are able to educate them on what the problem is and how to solve the problem. And then they're going to see you as the authority within that area and bring you in as a partner. But in order to be a partner, you have to have a vested interest in each other's success. Just that surface level transactional piece is not something I'm interested in. We don't take on those clients. It's, if you want to DIY, I'll show you how to do it, but then I'm going to say goodbye, because we're not going to battle every time we want to make a change. Yeah. I'm here because there's a level of knowledge and certainty around what I'm doing, that if you don't want to do that, by all means, I'll show you, 1,000 other providers that can show you how to DIY it.
Yeah.
So we have a very, very specific model, and we have a very certain profile of the type of individuals that we want to work with, that we want to be associated with Pixel True.
Yeah. So you mentioned the word battle there, and I imagine that, with regards to your specific model and your client profile type, that you say these are our ideal clients and this is where we'll get the most success, that doesn't mean it's going to be completely smooth sailing. No. During the journey, as you mentioned, you're educating them on the things that are most likely very, very near and dear to their hearts, and right. They've been doing it for quite some time. How do you navigate the potential thorny thorniness, I don't even know if that's a word, of saying, listen, you're actually wrong. That you're focusing on the wrong thing. That is not what you do. This is what you do. Like, how does that go? How do you manage and
Curiosity and
navigate?
education
Right.
are the two biggest things. I'm blessed to be a naturally curious person.
Yeah.
I want to understand. I want to learn, and I'm interested in people's stories and what's behind the decisions that they're making. But then, taking that the next step, reframing, rephrasing, and providing them the information with evidence in the background to say, okay, I totally understand where you're coming from. This may be your target audience, but they're a tiny portion of the people that are actually buying your product.
Aye.
Here's the greater portion. Here's who we want to focus on. Here's how we want to focus on them. Here's the evidence that says they make these purchasing decisions because of these factors, right? This is what's important to them. So showcasing some of the research behind what we're doing, to say this is why you should have your messaging in this way, rather than just going at it and saying, no, you're wrong. If you don't agree with me, goodbye. It's really about understanding what is it that's holding them to that belief, and how can we educate them to seeing an alternative perspective around that belief. Some clients are naturally adverse to the utilization of heuristics, right?
Right.
Heuristics is essentially shortcuts in your brain to making decisions, because you have thousands and thousands of data points. And so we create these biases, cognitive biases, that allow us to make decisions really quickly. And some people see that as manipulative, right? Because we're taking the freedom of decision making away from somebody and helping them to make the decision for themselves.
Yeah.
And so people feel that can be scammy. But the reality is you're understanding what is in their best interest by targeting a very narrow set of people and showcasing to them what their problem is, how you can solve it, and how you're the best position to solve it for them, right? And if you're doing something that's immoral, yes, heuristics can be very problematic. But if you're honestly acting in the best interest of those individuals that you want to serve, you're just helping them to get to a decision sooner. And they
Yeah.
may not decide you're the person, but you're allowing them to get the information that they need to be educated on how they can resolve the problem set that they're facing.
Yeah. And that's such a skill, such a an art to be able to do that, to say, this is for your own good. If we
Mm-hmm.
have a rub point of some description, that it's from the best interests from both sides, from
Yeah.
the client and from the expert side as well. And in terms of the education, it seems like to me, Warren, that one of the things I mentioned on the bio was self-development, personal growth. It's
Mm-hmm.
an area that is of absolute interest to you as well. And it sounds like that's interwoven into the services that you're providing, to be able to say, by the way, this is not a one and done. This is a repeatable
Mm-hmm.
process, and it doesn't have to just be on your business side
That's
as
right.
well. Is that intentional?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our businesses are usually a reflection of who we are as individuals, right? They represent the goals and the aspirations, the values that we carry out into the world. And so, you have to continue building, altering, adapting to the environment that surrounds you and to who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And so, that personal growth is incredibly important. Working with coaches, working with, individuals that you respect their opinion and have something intelligent and thought changing to provide to you.
Yeah.
And so our goal is to be one of those influential pieces in somebody's circle in their life. Because as I said, that business is a significant portion of who they are,
Yeah.
and a public representation of themselves. So helping them to understand a bit more about what it is that they're trying to accomplish, the values that they carry forward, the principles, all of those different things, what they're doing in their business, they're likely to implement in their personal lives as well.
Yeah.
So, we recognize that we have an impact beyond just revenue and costs. It's a significant impact in their overall life by helping them to accomplish these things.
Definitely. Absolutely. And creating that that cognizant or cognitive identification, connection there as well. I talk about this often in class when I'm teaching at the university. Is, if you could go to, there's a number of different examples, but say for example you go to a franchise restaurant in one side of the city, and then you go to another franchise restaurant in the other side of the city, or maybe just in a neighbouring town or city, and one of them is immaculate, spick and span. Yeah. Everyone has the button-down collars, and they're all clean, and everyone's super friendly. And then the other one, the exact same menu, the exact same type and style of physical layout, and it's just a wee bit grubby. It's a wee bit messy. The people are just a wee bit more unkempt. There's a wee bit of a loose atmosphere there, a little bit lazy feel to it. There's not the same level of attention to detail or caring and such. Yes, that's within this repeatable model that they have, but it's a reflection of who's leading that particular building versus that particular building. And if you can start to really see and feel that, then you're a step ahead in terms of your own ability to say, I don't mind driving an extra 10 minutes to have a better experience rather than going in there and it's just hit and miss depending on who's on shift that particular day. So I love that in terms of just awareness, literal awareness of actually literally what's happening. So in terms of personal growth for Warren specifically, now that you have a new focus in terms of your career and such, what does your new personal development process look like today versus what it used to be back in the day when you were essentially
it's a lot more time in the woods, honestly. It's I find that taking the dogs out in the woods is a huge part of the creative process for me, and kind of resetting my whole central nervous system. Right. Yeah. Getting out, removing that stress just by getting the fresh air and having that opportunity to limit the distractions and to think about the things that are really important to me. That's a big part of it. Therapy is a great one, something that I never thought I would be involved in, but it has been instrumental in understanding who I am, what my own cognitive biases are, really supporting the concept of act, don't react, right? Yeah. So allowing my principles and values to be the primary driver of how I take action, rather than allowing what's going on in the world around me to dictate how I react to it. Those would be kind of the biggest things for me in the personal growth aspect.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the analogy of having, the stresses and strains kind of wash away from you. I'm interested. Do you physically, literally feel that in the moment when you get into the woods? Yeah.
I'm very fortunate that we live in a rural community, and it's not rural in pastoral, but rural as in like out in the woods. Yeah. And so it's 5 minutes for me to be in woods where I can't see any houses. There's no lights, nothing like that. And it's just trails. And so the second I get under the boughs of the trees, it just washes right off. It's the same way that I used to feel. I live in a spot called Vancouver Island. And, before I was in Vancouver, and I would get off the ferry to Vancouver Island, I'd be driving off the ferry, and all of a sudden it felt more relaxed. Everybody moved a little slower. Everybody was a little friendlier. It's just island life. And I feel the same way now when I get out into the woods. Maybe it's just me becoming a recluse and a hermit from society and just moving further and further away from people. But whatever it is, it works.
It works. Absolutely. The reason I ask that is I have a similar experience when I'm running. And I like to run. I run essentially every second day. It's at the time of recording, this is winter time. So my outside time, I get a wee bit more selective. I'll typically run on my tread rather than going outside, just from a time management perspective. But more so when I'm outside, it doesn't matter what the weather is like, whether it's rain or shine or snow or hail or whatever it is. I have those moments, maybe not every single time, but I certainly go there with an expectation that I'm going to have an ability to be able to rid myself of things that are not serving me and create some space for thinking and a thought process of things that maybe I don't even know are going to come to the fore on that particular run. And then I come back physically refreshed, mentally
Yeah.
refreshed, and I'm reaching for either my phone or a piece of paper or something to write something down to say, I don't want to forget this. This is
Hmm.
gold dust. This is dynamite. So I'm glad that you have a similar experience. So I think I might have preempted, as you know, Warren, this is called the Best You
Hmm.
podcast. And what I try to do, or what I like to do, I should say, is take the opportunity to ask every guest, what's one regular practice that you employ to give Warren the best opportunity to be the best version of himself? You've mentioned going into the woods. You've mentioned therapy. Is there
Hmm.
anything else that you would recommend to people that you do regularly that gives you that opportunity for that percentage gain?
Embrace a hobby.
Right.
A hobby outside of work. Like it's so important to have something that is creative or athletic or something that pulls you away and breaks the monotony or the regular grind, the routine. Something that is going to allow you to feel success in small moments. Right.
Yeah.
Because those small successes lead to significantly bigger successes every single day by just having that in your mind. Like I do curling twice a week. Canada, right? And we won last night, and that small success has a profound impact on my positive mental attitude because it's having a great shot. I feel great about it, and
Yeah.
that leads me into the next great moment and the next great moment and the next great moment. It's just having something that you can do that you care about, that you can get emotionally invested in outside of work, outside of the drama that's usually going on in family. It's such a rewarding thing. And it can lead to so many other successes, whether it's networking or whether it's, just intrinsic success because you get accustomed to winning. It's just a very positive thing to have in your life.
Yeah, sage advice. Absolutely sage advice. I love that. I really do. So before I let you go, Warren, where can people find out more about you and about the Pixel group of companies?
LinkedIn is a great spot. I've got an incredibly unique last name, as you can see on here, Miles Pickup.
Yeah,
There are 8 Miles Pickups in the world. So if you look up
really.
Miles Pickup, you're going to find probably myself and my sister, primarily. Um, and pixeltrue.com
Yeah,
is our website. You'll be able to find me on there, send me an email, and or book a time with me if you want to learn more about what we're doing from a digital marketing and design perspective, or if you'd just like to chat and get some ideas about heuristics, cognitive biases, how to utilize the way that the human brain works to improve your business.
I love it. Warren, I was looking forward to this one. It's been an absolute delight and an education to get to chat to you again. Thanks very much for coming on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure.